Xavier, the time traveler. The only one we've never seen die before, unlike the other love interest. He's had a continuous life so far, from his shooting star myth, anecdotes, and world underneath. Well, that changes in this myth. The writers are making it clear the man with the ambiguous age isn't immune to death, and his existence isn't linear after all. His timeline is just going to be as scattered and messy, just like the others. Before I begin, as always, I have to say, I'm not here to tell you how to think or how to digest the story. I'm just here to share my perspective. We've all got the same puzzle pieces, and I'm just yapping about how I arrange mine and how the story makes sense to me. And as clarified in the game, other love interests don't exist within the context of a specific myth. Each myth is its own contained narrative, which lets us focus on a story that is unique to that specific love interest. This myth might be one of the most timey-wimey ones we've had so far, and I think it's one of my favorite ones because of that. It feels like it's closing a chapter, finally answering what happened after the shooting star myth, and in my opinion, it's literally closing a timeline. I hope you're somewhere cozy and have snacks ready because this video is going to be long as fuck. There is a lot to talk about. The myth opens on MC's consciousness drifting, buried in endless void, her soul traveling for centuries. This is Queen MC's consciousness, the same one from the shooting star myth. As we all know, at the end of that story, Xavier left and never came back. We already know why he did it. He left to save Philos and to stop MC from being sacrificed again and again. Obviously, and unfortunately, he failed to achieve his goal because our girl's soul is in the planet's core. She's become nourishment for Philos. There's a huge time skip from shooting star myth to this myth. The bright, shining crown prince of Philos is no more. He is now an edgelord and a king. But how the hell did this happen? So let's start with where the story of this myth takes place. This myth takes place far into the future in the same timeline as Shooting Star myth, where Philos is no longer Philos. The great kingdom fell under the rule of its crown prince, Xavier, the last monarch of Philos. At first, he was beloved and celebrated by all, but as the kingdom fell, he became the scapegoat, blamed for a destruction that was always inevitable. War and disaster swept the land, and as the fires of conflict refused to die out, Philos became Sindersfell. This name is incredibly fitting and symbolic because the name evokes the word cinders, or ashes, remnants of something that once burned bright but now lies cold, forgotten, and ruined. It's a perfect metaphor for the Revenants who roam the city. They're former citizens of Philos who once thrived under immortality, but are now reduced to mere shadows of their past selves, endlessly wandering a land that's no longer alive but not quite dead. Immortality, which once seemed like a blessing, is now a curse. They can't move on, can't die, can't even remember who they were. These revenants are caught in a cruel perpetual cycle. Each time they're struck down, their deaths are merely temporary pauses. With the phases of the moon, they return again, reliving the trauma and obsessions of their past. They exist, but they're not truly living, conscious yet disconnected from true life. It's a state of eternal limbo that mirrors the decay and melancholy of the city around them. This place is the complete opposite of what Philos used to be. Once this planet was overflowing with life and glory, pristine, shining, almost eternal in its beauty, and now it's a wasteland. Everything has perished. The void has swallowed the land. Its transformation twisted and affected everything and everyone in it. Even the people have become echoes of what they once were. The crown prince who once radiated light and wielded the light blade to protect his kingdom is now a king with a weapon turned dark, a blade that can only cut down the dead. When MC first regains consciousness in this world, she finds herself in the monastery of the Order of Babel, surrounded by chanting acolytes. And the girl has no idea what's happening. All she knows is that these strangers are fanatically worshipping her, calling her the chosen one, claiming she's the figure from prophecy destined to lead them out of darkness. Her memories are hazy. She can't remember anything, let alone why she's here or who she used to be. Before she can even process what the hell is happening, the so-called Mad King, Xavier, the tyrant blamed for Philos' ruin, burst into the monastery, shattering whatever ritual they had planned. When they first see each other, MC immediately feels like this isn't their first meeting. It's almost as if they're reuniting after years of separation. And even though that is true, Xavier does everything he can to shut down any sense of familiarity, acting cold and distant, even pointing a sword at her like she's just a stranger. But all of that is just him putting up walls. The truth is, he never stops watching over her because the moment she actually runs into danger, Xavier is there in an instant, swooping in to save her. You have to imagine what Xavier must have felt in that moment, seeing her again after hundreds of years, carrying all that regret and guilt. He's lived with the weight of failing to save her, and now suddenly she's right in front of him. She may not remember their past, but he does. The way he acts so distant when they first met, how he pretends this isn't some long-awaited reunion, that is pure self-punishment. It really feels like he's forcing himself to lock down his feelings, probably because he thinks he's already failed her once. Maybe more than once. But the second she's actually in danger, he is right there protecting her. Because even after centuries of regret and self-blame, some things never change. The man is still smitten. So one thing leads to another, and he ends up helping her, taking her to find shelter because MC is basically homeless and suffering from amnesia. The only safe place she can go to is Sindersfell City, which means crossing the river that cuts through the heart of this ruined land. And to get across, they need to take a ferry. But here's the wild part. The ferryman running this gloomy river cruise isn't some random background character. The guy ferrying souls back and forth is actually someone we all know too well, their old teacher. I have something to say about the presence of this character and just the way he acts, but I'll save it for later. So the fare to cross the river is 1 silver coin. The ferryman, who already looks extra grumpy, clearly isn't happy because Xavier's presence completely ruins his business. The Revenants don't just hate Xavier, they're terrified of him. As soon as he shows up, all the other passengers ditch the ferry. And to top it off, when it's finally their turn, Xavier doesn't even have any money. You'd think the Mad King would at least have some pocket change, but nope. He's broke. So MC steps in and covers his fare. But she's not being generous for nothing. Her price is for Xavier to become someone important to her. At first, it's just practical. She wants protection and a place to stay. She's lost everything. She has no memories and needs security. But that deal is what actually starts drawing them together, even with her memories wiped. And as MC spends time wandering in Sindersfell City, she keeps hearing the Revenants repeat with so much conviction that they will return to Philos someday. After a while, she finds herself starting to believe in it too, that she will return to Philos, and she started to believe that returning to Philos is her only shot at recovering her memories and figuring out who she really is. This becomes her one and only goal, at least before she remembers everything. She genuinely believes that if she can just make her way back, her memories will return and she'll finally know herself again. To her, it's not just about remembering the past, it's about reclaiming her sense of self. Because for as long as she's been here, no one has seen her as a real person except for Xavier. The Revenants only ever call her the Chosen One, reducing her entire existence to a cold, impersonal title. And this is almost unbearable to her, how her whole identity, everything she might have been, is erased and replaced with a role, a prophecy. She refuses to accept that this is all that she is. And so she starts searching for ways, any clue that might take her back to Philos. She listens to the Revenant stories, their myths, poems, rites, and ceremonies that are all supposed to lead them home, which was a terrible idea because these Revenants are, well, dead. Most can't even remember who they are or how they died. The dead can only cling to stories they've heard from others, fragments passed down and reshaped over centuries. And that is exactly what makes them the perfect, supple subjects for this wonderful thing called indoctrination. So these ceremonies and old beliefs that she hears from the Revenants, they're being spoon-fed by the so-called acolytes of the Order of Babel, the religious cult running the show in Sindersfell. The name Babel is perfect, honestly. Like the Tower of Babel. Humans trying to reach the heavens, chasing immortality and meaning, only to be struck down and scattered. It's a story about ambition turning into punishment, about people reaching too far and paying the price. And there's something so symbolic about Xavier's fixation on paying for their sins for wanting eternity. Philos tried to cheat death and achieve immortality, just like humans once tried to build a tower to heaven in the Tower of Babel story. And what did all that ambition earn them? Not paradise, but confusion, suffering, and a limbo they can never escape. The Order of Babel, just like the biblical tower, stands as a symbol of obsession and hubris. All their endless ceremonies and rituals are really just desperate attempts to reclaim what's lost. But all they do is keep everyone trapped in the same cycle of suffering, turning the desperate revenants into fanatical religious zealots. They can't even die properly. When you're trapped in that kind of limbo for centuries, clinging to anything that offers hope is almost inevitable. They're immortal but stuck, unable to move on from their obsessions, forever chasing the idea of salvation or the promise of returning home. That kind of psychological torment only pushes their fanaticism even further. The masses need something to believe in, and the acolytes of Babel exploit that emptiness. The Revenants' amnesia and existential void makes them a blank canvas for the Order's indoctrination. And the one leading the Order of Babel is this guy. And he's not just some random ex-Philosian who got bored of being undead and decided to start a cult. He's actually someone from the original royal family of Philos. You know, the same assholes, royals, who kicked off the whole human sacrifice mess just to keep their artificial planet alive. Back then, people followed the royals because, well, they were royalty, symbols of authority, stability, and supposed wisdom. Now, even though they're undead, not much has changed. They've swapped out their crowns for hoods, calling themselves acolytes instead of royals, but the dynamic is the same. People still flock to them in desperate times, hoping for answers in the darkness, clinging to whatever promise of salvation they can get. Honestly, it's the same old power game, just with new labels. The titles changed, but the manipulation didn't. These ceremonies and prophecies the Order of Babel keeps spoon-feeding the Revenants aren't even new. They're just recycled rituals from long before Philos turned into Sindersfell. The same business of sending people into a cave deep in Starfall Forest. We do get more information about how the royals and Philos conducted that sacrifice back then. So when the royal family stopped hiding the sacrifices, they rebranded the whole thing as a pilgrimage ceremony, dressing up forced death as something honorable and noble. Instead of dragging victims into the forest, they convinced Philosians to offer themselves up, obediently fueling their artificial planet's so-called immortality. Centuries later, even as Philos is dust and its people are just undead echoes, they're still doing the same rituals, just to keep their undead place exist and just to exist as undeads. I don't understand their logic, because if I have to exist like that, I would rather just perish. The only difference for these Revenants is that now, because they can't even die for real, they're trapped forever in the river and the cave that used to be Starfall Forest. And that tree of life the prophecies keep promising, sure, it exists. But not in this world. Not in any physical space the Revenants or anyone else can reach. The tree that exists in Sindersfell is almost like a complete opposite to the tree of life. It couldn't be further from a source of life or hope. Instead, it's a horrifying, grotesque monument made from the crystallized corpses of sacrificed Philosians. Bodies twisted together, reaching upward as if they could escape from their fate. Far from granting immortality, this tree embodies the tragic irony at the heart of Philos' false eternity. Everybody in the tree is someone whose name, memory, and life were erased for the supposed greater good. This tree is the physical record of Philos' unresolved sins, a silent monument to countless forgotten lives. I gotta say, as someone who loves creepy, grotesque visuals, I was kind of disappointed they didn't go all out on this one. The way they described the tree was so vivid. Can you imagine how sick it would have looked if they actually animated it? Or even slapped some proper art behind the text while we read? Ugh, wasted opportunity. I seriously hope someone out there has made a fan art of this, because I would love to see it. So SMC spent more time in Sindersfell with Xavier. They grew closer. and fell in love all over again. And she slowly started to remember who she was, her own past, Xavier, and the history they shared. One thing that really broke me was when I learned that all this time Xavier has been living alone in that sprawling, empty castle in a city filled with revenants who at least have each other. He's had nothing but his own company. He's surrounded by people, revenants, who hate him, curse his name, and blame him for the fall of Philos, even though it was never really his fault to begin with. Philos' destruction was inevitable because the whole system of sacrifice was unsustainable and corrupt. Xavier just happened to be king at the end, so he gets all the blame. If we look back at the Shooting Stars myth, the royal family thought that tossing MC into Starfall Forest at the right time would fix their problem. Well, she did it. She sacrificed herself, she threw herself in there, and Philos still fell. Blaming Xavier is just another way for the Revenants, the Philosians, the royal family to avoid facing the real structural reasons Philos was doomed. The whole planet was never meant to exist in the first place. Xavier is trapped in a place where he's both the outcast and the scapegoat, unable to move on, unable to fix anything. No wonder he's going around on his horse killing Revenants and terrorizing them and spouting cheesy lines, "You must pay for your sins." If that were me, I'd be bitter as hell. He's better than me because if I were in his shoes, I'd be a cartoonishly evil villain. Like, are you kidding? These people are blaming him for the mess that they created. I feel so bad for the Xavier in this myth. The sheer emptiness of his existence and the wasteland he's trapped in almost makes his death and MC's death later in the myth feel like a release rather than a tragedy. It makes it less painful, you know what I mean? Like, sure, it's sad, but I would honestly rather die if I have to exist like that. Anyway, once MC starts to remember, the pieces fall into place. She recalls what happened in the Shooting Stars myth, that her knight, Xavier, crossed the Starry Sea and never returned. She was the queen with no royal blood, beloved by her people, leading Philos back to its former glory during her reign. She really was a great queen. She stopped the sacrifices, forbade anyone from entering Starfall Forest, and for a while, Philos lived without bloodshed. But that peace wouldn't last. When the planet started to fail, running out of energy, one of the elders told her that only the ether core in her heart could save Philos. So she did what she thought was the right thing to do, unfortunately repeating the cycle of sacrifice. By the time Xavier finally returned, centuries later, she was already gone. The both of them tried to save Philos in their own ways. Xavier through time travel, MC through sacrifice, but neither succeeded because Philos' destruction couldn't be prevented. In the last two chapters, it really feels like the writers are trying to wrap up this story without spelling out some of the most important mysteries. Honestly, I get it. If they actually explained everything, it would probably take more than 9 chapters, and they're clearly saving some of these huge plot points for future updates. The biggest unresolved thread is the protocol Xavier gave to MC. Let's talk about the protocol first. The writers don't spell out what this special protocol is, but my guess, this is something Xavier found during his backtracking. It's what let MC cross the boundary between life and death and access the divergence point, just like the prophecy said. So let's try and make sense of all of this and piece everything together. Back in Shooting Stars myth, the goal of their backtracking was first to save Philos because wanderers were gnawing away at the planet from within, and wanderers exist because of all the human sacrifices. And the second is to stop MC from being endlessly sacrificed, trapped as the planet's eternal fuel. To do that, they had to go back in time before Philos was even created. Xavier himself says,
"If we are to save Philos, we cannot do it in this era."
This myth doesn't say where he goes, but the game hints pretty strongly it's Earth, because the people of Earth are Philos' ancestors. World Underneath 6 and Xavier's third anecdote? No, yes, Xavier's third anecdote spells this out. But going back to Earth is not necessarily main timeline Earth. This game's multiverse works like a web, not a straight line. I feel like I have to mention this because I know I'm gonna get comments about people thinking that this Xavier time traveled to main timeline Earth and met main timeline MC. No, guys. So from a multiverse perspective, which is more like a web and not a straight line, there are infinite Earths, infinite timelines, some with MC, some without. Like the Dawnbreaker universe, which is also set on Earth, and is a timeline with no MC in it. So Xavier goes back in time to one version of Earth and is gone for a couple of centuries. We don't know what he experienced. The writers kept that a mystery. But when he finally returns, he's alone. We don't see Jeremiah or anyone else from their backtracker team in this myth. So we can only assume that the golden retriever flower boy Jeremiah is dead, which makes me sad when I think about it because I love Jeremiah. So if Xavier came back with the protocol fragment that could potentially save Philos, why didn't he use it? Why let Philos descend into chaos and ruin until it became Sindersfell? I think there are two reasons. The first is guilt. He wasn't just too late to save MC, he led the entire backtracker team on a mission to change fate, and he came back alone. He led these people to their death. Who wouldn't question themselves after that? He lost everyone. He's the survivor, the king. But after all those lives and choices, he can't bring himself to play hero with Philos again. You really see this in how Xavier acts once he gives MC the protocol fragment. When she finally makes her decision, he asks her,
Was this your choice? Good. The choice you made must be the best one.
Xavier doesn't trust himself anymore, so he puts his faith in MC instead. Instead of trying to save Philos himself, he steps back. He gives her the power and lets her make the call. Because at this point, he's been broken by the weight of his own choices. And the second reason I thought of, even though Xavier had the fragment, I don't think he can use it himself. He couldn't cross the boundary between life and death to save his world. Why do I think that? Well, when MC went into the cave with that protocol fragment, it resonated with her heart, and then something pulled her in. And then she ended up in that otherworldly space, face to face with this. It resonated with her heart, and before she knew it, she was pulled into an entirely different world, a space beyond anything ordinary. That's why I think she's the only one who could actually do this. It's something about her resonance. If anyone walked in with that same fragment, I don't think anything would happen. Like, she literally is the chosen one. Not gonna lie, the first time I watched this myth and I got to this scene, I was caught completely off guard, especially when the tree started talking. I was like, what is happening? But let's talk about this space. Based on the game's description, when she resonates with the protocol fragment, she's transported into this liminal cosmic space, a kind of metaphysical crossroads, or the heart of reality itself. This place exists outside of time and space, where all possibilities and timelines converge. So if we think back to the reveal of what MC actually is, it makes complete sense that she's the only one who can enter this place. This is just another reminder that MC isn't just anyone. At her core, she's literally connected to the flow of all possibilities, able to witness every path a world could take. And this cosmic space also sort of represents that, a nexus where every timeline and possibility meet. So of course she's the only one who can access it. It fits perfectly with everything we know about her origin. She's bound up with the concepts of death, rebirth, divergence, and choice in the universe itself. Like I said, I was a bit confused at first about why this tree existed here and how this space was even accessible from the heart of Philos or Sindersfell. But thinking it through, it makes sense. The tree acts like a world axis. It's connected to everything. It links to the greater web of possibilities. Every branch, every timeline, even the doomed ones, all trace back to this source, the axis at the center of it all. And the way this tree and this space is described, the world flows in a sea of consciousness. Countless fine veins of light extend from a main trunk, their rhythmic flow resembling the breathing of a large organism. This is classic world tree imagery, the tree of life, a cosmic structure whose branches and veins represent all the living connections, all the possibilities, the entire system of reality itself. One thing that stood out to me the most when I first got to this scene was when the tree says to MC,
"Our fates are similar, and yet they are different."
That line is so loaded with meaning. The tree recognizes MC as a kindred spirit. Both of them are at the center of fate. Both are burdened by other people's choices, and both used as vessels of hope. Their fates mirror each other. They're always at the center of things, but here's the difference. The tree is bound to its place, stuck as the axis for all timelines and possibilities. It can't choose. All it can do is offer the chance for change. MC, on the other hand, for reasons the game still hasn't fully explained, she isn't bound anywhere. She's kind of everywhere. Her consciousness scattered across timelines, living out different lives, but all still part of the same energy, the same soul. Unlike the tree, which is more like a watcher, she actually gets to make choices. She has agency. She can break cycles, decide new fates, not just sit there and watch or keep things going as they are. She's basically change in a human form, the universe's reset button. So, this tree lays everything bare. Sindersfell is a failed possibility, a false branch, spiraling from what Philos once was. No matter what she does, Philos is always fated for destruction. The protocore she holds, the very thing that could save Philos, has the power to patch up the cracks in this dying branch, and has the power to make that eternal city a reality. But at what cost? If she uses it, she's just playing the role everyone else wants for her, becoming their tool, granting the immortality they crave. She would trap herself, Xavier, and the Revenants in the same endless cycle, trapping everyone in eternity. So now, after witnessing firsthand how people, dead or alive, only ever want her as a means to their own salvation, she finally chooses a different path. For once, she refuses to be used, refuses to make the same mistake. She decides to return to the divergence point and create new possibilities, and let this false Philos, this broken branch, collapse. Not for others, but for herself, and for the one she loves. Xavier. And with her decision made, knowing this would be her last moment in this world, MC finds Xavier one last time on the battlefield. The battlefield is chaos. Ashes swirling, revenants turning to crystal and shattering in the flood of light. The city built on endless sacrifice is finally unraveling. But in that storm of ruin, it's just the two of them. For a moment, the carnage disappears. The battlefield turns into a garden of flowers, only for them. It's poetic and tragic. Even as everything falls apart, love lets them see beauty where there should only be despair. Their farewell becomes something sacred, a memory blooming in the ashes. The past, the pain, the centuries spent apart, all of it slips away, and their last kiss is not a farewell but a homecoming, a moment of paradise carved out of destruction. This is the moment where this timeline collapses. This is why I said this myth feels like a closing of a story. This is literally her closing this timeline. As soon as the both of them die, her consciousness separates from her body and she is guided through the river of time. MC slips into familiar darkness, and she's carried not to the very beginning, but to a new branch in time, to the divergence point Xavier created. And that divergence point is exactly when Xavier left on Traceback 2, when he left to save Philos, when he travels back in time. But the story pauses here to show us two crucial moments as MC travels back, guided by the river of time towards this new past or new possibility. The first is a quiet, pivotal scene, young Xavier with his mom. Their conversation is the seed that grows into everything Xavier will become. She teaches him that real strength isn't about wielding a sword for someone else or blindly following duty. True peace and true meaning comes from making choices yourself, carrying burdens because you chose them, not because they were forced upon you. This is a rare glimpse of Xavier's roots, and it matters. This moment stays with Xavier, shaping who he is at every step.
Predetermined answers aren't what makes us human. It's about embarking on a journey to find answers, even when you already know them. Knights wield swords for their king, and kings wield swords for their country. You shall have peace in your heart only when you wield your sword for the choices you've made of your own free will.
That line is the core of Xavier's arc, the search for meaning and responsibility by his own will, not by fate or tradition or what anyone else expects. The second moment is from the early days of the backtracking team. The teacher catches them, calls them out for trying to defy the royal family, and Xavier stands his ground. His mother's lessons stick. When he's older and under pressure, he still stands by his own choices. Side by side, these moments explain why Xavier becomes the person who creates the divergence point, why he dares to travel back in time, no matter what he'll face. And probably in every version of fucked up Philos out there, he's gonna do the same thing. They're not just flashbacks, they're the roots of his conviction. So basically in this new timeline, almost everything happens as before. MC still becomes the queen of Philos. Xavier still leaves to time travel and to save the planet. The main events of Shooting Star Smith play out again, but the difference is the ending. It's no longer my star has left me. Queen MC isn't in pain and sadly waiting for Xavier to come back anymore. This time, she understands that he left because he wanted to save her. Unlike in Shooting Stars where he kept her in the dark. This time, she knows that she's the reason for everything he's done. And now that MC is a time traveler, she's not about to repeat the same old mistake of sacrificing herself. Now, the real difference and why this is considered a new possibility is because this is where Xavier goes to Earth. The Earth that has the main timeline MC. This is where he, where he went to the main timeline. Since we literally see him traveling through the deep space tunnel, which we know is connected to main timeline MC. Queen MC is even aware that he's headed towards main timeline MC because the game says, but in the universe where time still has an end, he must have gone to where I am. And we all know that the main timeline is where it all goes down. If the characters of Love and Deepspace are aware of the story, they probably would fight for their lives to spawn in the main timeline. Because if you spawn anywhere else, especially in the myths, you're fucking dead. You will die. Tragically. But the most comforting part of all this, Queen MC actually knows what's happening now. And she knows she's not going to make the same sacrifice. She's just way more equipped to handle whatever comes next because this is not her first rodeo anymore as a queen. You know what? It's not like Philosians were always like this. Greedy, terrified of change, doing anything to fight death. Remember the prayers the Revenants always say, "May Philos prosper under eternity's divine gaze"? Its meaning has been completely twisted over the centuries, but according to Xavier, the origins are almost beautiful. When he explains what eternity originally meant in Philos, it's not about living forever, it's about the survival of stories, legacy, memory. Eternity meant that their joys and sorrows would be passed down, remembered by both the living and the dead. The living keep the flame alive, the dead become the stories. As long as those stories are told, their echoes resonate through the ages, connecting lives and hearts across time. The stories of the dead inspire the living, and that inspiration carries forward, creating a beautiful, unending cycle of memory and meaning. That's the eternity the original Philosians were referring to. If we line this up with Xavier's third anecdote, it's pretty clear Philos wasn't born out of greed or a lust for power. It was created after Earth's collapse, as humanity's last hope. The original Philosians were just trying to survive, trying to make sure their happiness and pain wouldn't be forgotten. Only later, when the fear of change and loss took over, did everything start to rot. This prayer survived through generations because the earliest Philosians knew how fragile everything was. They understood that their man-made planet wouldn't last forever. They were not obsessed with immortality. They just wanted their lives to matter, to leave a mark that would outlast them. I can't help but think how beautiful the original meaning of this prayer is. It's almost like a Philosian memento mori, a whispered reassurance that life is precious because it ends, and that true eternity lives in the memories we pass on, not in resisting the end. But somewhere along the way, that idea warped. A wish to be remembered twisted into a refusal to let go, into the obsession with literal immortality. Now, let's talk about what finding new hope for Philos actually means. What is this new hope when Philos, in this new branch this world MC travels to, is still the same artificial planet, still built on sacrifice, still something that shouldn't have existed at all. To me, New Hope doesn't mean Philos gets a storybook ending, or that its existence is suddenly justified after everything. Instead, New Hope means that for the first time, there's an actual possibility for the cycle to be broken, to do things differently, even if it means letting go of something that should have never lasted. So when the tree says,
Philos' fate might find a new hope, or it will march toward irreversible destruction once more.
It's not promising a perfect world or a happily ever after. New Hope just means a crack in the endless cycle, a chance to finally change things. And yes, I do think that Queen MC, armed with everything she knows now, will probably let Philos meet its end when this moment comes.
Philos is about to meet its end. We beseech you, your majesty. As the ruler of Philos, you must ensure this planet survives. The ether core within your heart can save Philos from destruction.
This plea will definitely come again because the core of Philos hasn't changed. It's still running on blood and sacrifice. But now, MC has conviction. She refuses to make the same mistake twice. She herself says it. So unless Philos can find a way to sustain itself without sacrifice, Queen MC is probably gonna let it go. She's probably gonna let Philos shit itself. And honestly, I love her for that. She's grown so much. She's been through hell and come out with a spine of steel. And there are even hints from Xavier's anecdote that their Philos is already gone. But who knows? Maybe she's not finished yet. I just feel so comforted knowing that now MC finally knows what's going on. She can actually make her own choices with the full knowledge of everything. Like, she's not in the dark anymore. The fact that Xavier never told her that he left for her, that she was the one who gave him the tassel, that she was the one who was endlessly sacrificed, is absolutely wild to me. Not that it would have changed the outcome. I really think that she needed to experience firsthand how the Philosians, dead or alive, were just using her as a tool. That's the only way she'd come to the conclusion that she won't save them and won't be a tool anymore. But like, come on! Xavier had the guts to ask her to run away and get married in an entirely different star system, but he couldn't tell her any of this? I love Xavier. I love his character. I love his lore. In terms of lore, his lore is my favorite, but he deserves a smack for this one. I swear to God, these fictional characters and their communication issues are fucking killing me. All the boys have communication issues, by the way. It's not just him. Alright, so here are my final thoughts and lingering questions. Overall, this myth was so good. Seriously, so well written. Everything came full circle, but as usual, I have more questions than answers. Like, what exactly is that protocol fragment that Xavier has? And what makes it so special that it let MC not just meet a fucking world tree, but literally create another timeline? I really wish they'd explain where he got it and what makes it different from all the other protocols. Well, maybe we'll get an answer to that in his main story update. Okay, at least now we know why he's doing this in the early chapters of the main story. And then the whole thing about Revenants not having memories. Except some of them do. The bishop and the ferryman, who's actually their teacher. And the teacher doesn't even look dead. Well, maybe they just kept his character portrait so that we'd recognize him, but still, he and the bishop remembers everything. Maybe it's a royal family thing? Who knows? But that's just weird to me how they never addressed that. And also, why did the tree thank MC for choosing Xavier? Someone commented on my community post that they think the tree is actually Xavier's mom. I don't know about that. I think it's way too early to guess, but I am sure that we're gonna see this tree again. There's no way they would introduce something like that and not bring it back. Alright, so I went back and I listened to these characters' voices in English and in Chinese.
Predetermined answers aren't what makes us human. It's about embarking on a journey to find answers, even when you already know them. Go a little further ahead, and you can return to where everything began. Our fates are similar, and yet they are different.
人之所以为人，不是因为既定的答案，而是即便知道答案， 也要走上寻找答案的过程。再往前走，你就可以回到一切开始的地方了。我们的命运相似，却又不同。
It seems like both versions are using the same voice actor, but I don't know if it means anything because sometimes, especially in the English version, Info tend to use the same voice actor for different characters. For example, Raphael's aunt, like you can hear her voice actor voicing different characters. So I don't know if it means anything. I guess I'm just gonna keep in mind that there is a possibility that the tree might be his mom. So I'm just gonna keep an open mind and just wait for more lore to drop. Also, what surprised me the most is that I didn't even cry or feel super sad watching their last cutscene. What did make me tear up was the flashback of Xavier placing a flower on Queen MC's tomb. And the fact that her tomb is on their little planet. That was actually diabolical in Fold. Right after the wedding banner where he took her there and they exchanged vows, now every time I rewatch Xavier's wedding card, I'm just gonna cry all over again. Also, I'm pleasantly surprised to learn that Isaiah is part of the royal family. Recently, in one of Xavier's newer cards, we've seen him interact with Xavier and Jeremiah. The fact that they're giving us this information means that we're definitely gonna see him more in the future. You know what? I'm just excited for some royal family drama in the main timeline. So we are definitely seeing a pattern with these third myths. They're all about wrapping things up or closing off timelines. That's exactly what happened in Tears of Ramiro and now again here. And just because of that, I'm fully expecting Zayne's next myth to follow the same vibe, which I'm really excited for because if I'm right, that means we'll get a conclusion of what happened after Master of Fate. That myth is still super open-ended. Nobody died, Zayne just disappeared, MC is out there searching for him. I want to know what happened to them after that. And also, I want to see Zayne rocking full, majestic, regal, ancient Chinese fantasy clothes. Please, dear gods, I want to see it. I need to see it animated. Well, that's all from me. When I finished this myth, my brain was literally scrambled. I had to rewatch it a few times just to piece everything together. I hope I managed to get my thoughts across. If not, then I am sorry. I tried my best. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, maybe subscribe. You know the drill. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!